Annyeong, hello, I am the Dark Fae, and welcome back to Confessions of a First-Time Dungeon Master. As always, if you missed the last session, I'll put a link to it up in the corner for you over here. You can go check it out, catch up on what you missed, and then come back here to find out what happens next. And believe me, you want to find out what happens next. So, we are now in session 47. Without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so I did end up tweaking the sort of travel kind of chase mechanics a little bit before the session, so I did some contested survival checks from both Merrigan as well as the Warforged Titan that they are following unbeknownst to them yet. Looking back, I think I could have made it like a group survival check to see how well they did, but for the purposes of this, and Merrigan kind of being their experienced guide, I felt having him roll was kind of okay. And I feel like maybe if they didn't have a guide, then it would be more of like a definite group check, since it's kind of, it would have been on their own sort of skill. But anyways, so for day 4, they rolled a 19, and 19, I put a slightly vague kind of a encounter where, quote, they spot a large figure in the distance in the snow. So kind of at the end of day 3, there were some howling winds that had picked up a little bit of snowdrift, nothing too terrible though. And Beverin, or Beravin, I still don't really know which name she decided on, who has a familiar, sends his hawk kind of scouting about an hour ahead of them just to make sure that they are not about to run into anything. So about midday, they're approximately an hour from the sort of newly crumbled ruin wall tower that they had spotted the day previous, and I mentioned that the hawk sees some footprints going west to east. So essentially with their pathway currently heading northward, this kind of newly ruined tower would be to their east, maybe a few hundred feet, and then the footprints are kind of going perpendicularly towards the path, so they would essentially meet the path of whatever this thing was, and these large footprints. So they have Merrigan kind of take them a little bit now northeast to kind of make more of a beeline towards the ruins, to see if there's anything there. They do kind of spot the footprints that are large, again, that seem to move across their path and then head kind of actually toward the ruins, but they don't see any creature around. The amulet that Umric has been monitoring does not seem to spin any faster, and the orb in the center is still giving off a slightly now northwestern direction. So it doesn't seem like whatever this was their quarry. So they continue heading north, kind of coasting back a little bit west, kind of back to the path that they had been on. And a few minutes later, with Berevin's hawk still circling and keeping a watch, it spots, kind of stepping out from behind some large, ice spires, what looks to be a blue-skinned, kind of white-haired and white beard, heavily armored frost giant with a direwolf traveling companion that seems to be headed back westward. Maybe it heard some commotion and wanted to investigate what was at the ruins, didn't seem to find anything, and now it's heading back to where it came from. So, very quickly, actually, they spring into action because the giant is actually only a few hundred feet away, just what hadn't really been visible since it was behind some large kind of blocks of ice and stone. So I'm going to go with Beverin from now on. Beverin, he casts Rope Trick, which I'll put it here. It's a spell where you can take a length of rope and basically it'll stand straight up and a little extra dimensional doorway kind of appears at the top of it that can fit, I believe, up to 8 medium or smaller creatures and lasts for an hour. It's pretty great for short rests. So they all clamber up the rope into this extra dimensional space, looking out tensely through the window to see if this giant is indeed passing or if it notices them, and they're a good 50 feet up, so pretty soon they can hear the loud kind of footsteps of the giant, and then eventually the giant kind of passes beneath him, and he's a good, I kind of forget like the actual dimensions of frost giants, but I believe I said he was about like 16 to 18 feet tall, so he's about 30-35 feet below them as they kind of just watching through this little window that they have. And it is kind of casually looking around, just like surveying its surroundings, but it does not appear to notice them. And it and the direwolf, although maybe the direwolf would have smelled them, but either way, without seeing anything immediately in view, they continue onward, and eventually the footsteps recede to the point where they're no longer audible. A few minutes pass, and it seems like it's safe. Then they continue on, and that is approximately the fourth day. But towards kind of the evening, the spheres are starting to rotate more around the little orb, this kind of armillary sphere. The outer two rings are starting to spin as well as the third, slightly. Umric kind of notices that the third one slows a little bit at nighttime, since the Titan doesn't really need to rest as much as they do. It continues on for a little bit after they do. The outer two rings kind of seem to stay the same, so it seems to have kept its distance, and they are gaining on it after this fourth day. So the watch goes by without much of a hitch, and then we're on to day 5. So day 5, they're Merrigan again kind of telling them that the taverns, the tunnels and caverns that he was talking about that are kind of situated at the northmost kind of point of the wastes where people can easily traverse, where there's kind of this large, tall ice wall that kind of seems to form a natural barrier. It's probably about a day of travel out, and so with some good navigation, some luck, maybe they will be able to reach it by about sundown. So this time, I don't believe I had them roll a d20. Instead, what I did was I rolled survival checks for Merrigan kind of during their travel, and he rolled well enough. He beat the Warforged, and so then at sunset, and with Beverin's hawk still scouting, they were able to see that the Warforged was kind of making its path towards a very specific cavern. I believe they spotted it about an hour ahead, so they were about, I forget the exact timelines, but they were an hour away from the cavern. The Warforged was probably like half that distance or so. But anyway, so they start moving forward, and so basically what I gave them was at about 150 feet, they could very clearly kind of see this cave entrance inside of this wall, and then 100 feet from them, so 50 feet from the cave, about 2/3 of that distance, was this large, tall, cloaked kind of figure slowly kind of plodding his way towards the cave. So gave them a little bit of time to prepare, because I am a kind DM. Then they basically had a round, they essentially had a surprise round, because this thing is not really on the lookout for them and isn't really paying attention to them, and they're far enough away that he doesn't really notice them approach. So we begin with Basil and Umric. Basil grabs Umric in the dimension door directly behind the Titan, and Umric attempts to cast Banishment. Its charisma save is decent, and it does have advantage on saving throws against magical effects and spells, so it does save. So now it stops turns, and they can see like pretty much what the drow kind of guards had described to them. It's just like a very tall, kind of average human male face, short brown hair, a little bit of stubble, wearing kind of heavy armor, cloaked, sword and shield on its back. And he stands a good like 7 feet tall, so a little bit more than 7 feet tall. And then that's when we roll initiative. So this, honestly, this combat was crazy. I had so much fun this session. So the Warforged Titan, I kind of took from, it's a modified version of the Warforged Titan in the monster manual, and I could put those stats here, but I did up its HP since with a party of 6 characters at level 8, I'm gonna bump it up a little. It's pretty standard. And I tweaked its Dex, Intelligence, Wisdom, and then it has magic resistance. And then there's also some things that I added because it's not a regular Warforged Titan. It is in fact, spoilers, possessed by a certain evil entity, shall we say, that is trying to get it to destroy these orbs. So it does. So the way that I did this, it was a little bit different. So I rolled initiative for the Titan, and then I also every round would roll initiative for whatever unknown entity it was possessing it. So it's kind of more it's innate spellcasting and like spell-like abilities were basically given to it by this entity. And basically I'm kind of rolled so that she had control over that through the Titan and was able to kind of use those against the party on whatever her initiative was. And I kind of rolled it free form since it's a bit of like not a tenuous hold, but the powers do kind of seem to manifest randomly. She isn't like perfect control all the time. So that was kind of like a new mechanic that I tried out, and it worked pretty well, I think. Kind of ended up being a little bit like a legendary action without making the creature like a legendary creature because I didn't think that would fit. Anyways, so it also had, I think I also gave it another ability where it could, similar to its like swinging axe where it could stomp, but it would like knock the people around it prone, but do a little bit less damage, stuff like that. This was, this combat was really crazy. So, and I actually also designed it so that this Titan, like, it really sucks to be in melee with it. Like, it punishes melee fighters a lot because it itself is just a melee, like, tank. So, I mean, my players tend to, run up there, sit there, and just try to stab a thing to death. It's not a lot of strategy that I have seen. So, like, I feel like it's up to them to determine if they want to stay in melee range or not. Like, or like kite the thing, or it's just they gotta learn somehow, right? But anyways, a lot of stuff happened. So actually, in the second round, Umric recast banishment, and it actually worked. So it was kind of sent to a demiplane for a minute, and they had some time to heal a little bit and then prep some of their attacks and spells. Before that, actually, it cast Phantasmal Killer on Beverin, who failed, and Basil had to like dispel that illusion. Otherwise, he would take 4d10 psychic damage at the end of his turns if he kept failing that save. And his wisdom is not that high, if I recall. So, Puck, our new warlock, casts his cup of tea, summon greater demons. So now there is now a Balgura in the space that is gonna also fight this guy. So they all surround him, minus like the spellcasters staying a little bit further back. And once the minute is up and Emmerich lets the spell go, they all unleash some attacks. Most hit, some don't. And then some crazy stuff happened. Like Tyrol rolled 2 crits in a row because he rolled 2 19s with advantage to attacks. Beverin, who is a level 9 rogue, by the way, got a natural 20 on an attack with sneak attack, so that did like 58 for like 60 something points of damage in a round. The Titan like cast confusion on successfully on 3 people. I think it was like Ivar, Basil, and Tyrell, and also because of the stomp and like some of its attacks, because the confusion lasted a few rounds, they fell prone and then weren't able to get up because they were rolling like 3s and like a 5 or 6, so that they couldn't use their movement or their action or bonus action or anything to heal or get up. Tyrell stabbed Basil once because of it, and then the Warforged got a natural 20 on one of its punches, and on the I think it was on the punch or it was on the axe, I can't remember, but it did like 58 points of damage on that nat 20 to Tyrell, and I think because he was prone or something, and that just like instantly knocked him out. It hit him again, so he failed 2 death saves, but luckily with the initiative, the cleric was like right before Tyrell's turn, and so Umberg was able to heal him before having to roll that. And then on like turn 3 or 4, the Balgara. So the Balgara, the way Summon Greater Demon works is it rolls a charisma save after each of its turns to see if the spellcaster can keep control of it, otherwise it goes berserk and starts to attack everything in sight, and it lasts for like 1d6 rounds before disappearing. And it rolled a 17 charisma, even with, or an 18 minus 1, 17, which saved. So it went berserk. Puck rolled 1 for its rounds, luckily. So before that round where the Bulgara got its attacks, the Warforged had, this was like right after Tyrell had been knocked unconscious and healed back up. Actually, no, Tyrell was still unconscious at this point, and I could have actually killed him with his Thunder Wave, but I didn't. So because the Warforged was kind of low on HP, it's kind of in escape mode, or Criella might be telling it to escape. And so it casts a Thunder Wave like outwards towards like the mouth of the cave where the Bulgara, Ivar, and I think Bevran were standing. So it casts Thunder Wave. Bevran's the only one who fails, so he's pushed back actually, and I think from that Ivar actually goes unconscious. The Warforged steps over the body and moves forward into the cave now, about 35 feet or so. 35 feet. Basil gets an attack of opportunity, but has to roll a wisdom save because there's an effect with him, a bit like Sanctuary, where he's not quite able to attack it. That was the first attack he made, so it never came up before. But then directly after the Titan's turn is the Bulgara, and the Bulgara is in the spell of Summon Greater Demon. It states that it will attack the nearest non-demon, I think, that it sees. The nearest non-demon creatures are Ivar and Basil, who are both 10 feet away. Ivar is currently unconscious. Basil is at like 22 health or so. So, to be fair, what I did was I told them somebody pick like the lower, someone pick higher. Like I'm gonna roll 3 d20s on a 1 through 10, and then on 11 through 20, it'll decide who I hit. So Basil took the lower, Ivar took the higher. So I rolled a 3, a 5, and a 14. So it first makes its 2 attacks on Basil, and at advantage because he is prone. And on the second roll for each one of those hits, I rolled a natural 20. Now, a Bulgara, I'll put its stats here, I believe it does 2d6 plus, I think it's 4 damage on the bite, and a d10 plus 4 on the fist. So with like 22, 23 or something points of health, it's cutting it close, but like on average, yes, Basil should survive, but they were both natural 20s, so with the second hit, I think knocks him unconscious, and then on its third hit, its fist attack, it attacks Ivar, hits auto crit, and he loses 2 death saves. Now, directly after the Balgura is Basil, and then Ivar in the initiative. So Basil rolls a death save, he rolls a 14, and then it's Ivar, who is at 2 failed death saves. He rolls a 3, and fails. And so Ivar kind of laying there, just these kind of sparks kind of start fly from his body, and there's this, as his eyes stop glowing, he powers down. He is dead. Now, Umric is after them. I believe he heals the people who are downed, luckily, but he does have Revivify. He has 1 level 3 spell left, and he has the diamonds. But we are still currently in combat, and they seem still determined to go after the Warforged, who is now walking into the tunnel. So, because we were kind of heading a little bit late, we cut it short, and we're going to continue with the combat in the next session. But, oh my gosh, I honestly did not expect that to happen. If I did, like, I don't really think anyone would die. I thought it might get close. Like, it can do a heckin' lot of damage, but whoa, the Balgura. Also, after the Balgura did that, by the way, just poof, disappeared. So, yeah, I think without the Balgura, they would have been okay. So, Pucks might have to answer to that, and there might be an interesting thing that happens with Ivar being the one unconscious, so close to his Warforged brethren, and a curious link to his backstory that none of them know about. So, that'll be fun. It's fun for me to scheme. But, I mean, the Titan is close to death, I think. I think they'll be able to do it without much problem, because the spellcasters are fine because they kept their distance. This thing doesn't really have much ranged attack. Maybe they'll learn that, and maybe they'll stay away from it. I don't know. But now they are also kind of in the cavern near, potentially, where one of these orbs is. So I'm curious if they're going to also heed Asmodeum's warning to not go and try and destroy it. But also Basil's going to try hard to do so. But anyways, that's where we left off. And that's what we're going into in the next session. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, because I certainly had a lot of fun this session. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for notifications when I put out new videos. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!